Good evening. While people come in, I will give a quick introduction. My name is Peter Bergmans. I am CEO of Data Protection Institute, and I'd like to welcome you all here at our Privacy Cafe. We have actually two items on our agenda tonight. First, Valerie Van Der Heyden. Some of you will know him as he already spoke on one of our privacy cafes on the NIS2 directive. And as many people here in the room will know, we have a final text. It's not published yet, although I think it's quite interesting to discuss it already. And after the NIS2 discussion, we have Tim Verheijden and his panel, who will have a talk, and it has to be I think a smooth talk about beer, of course, on a privacy cafe on AI and privacy. That's the aim of tonight, and welcome for you all. I have some messages to make. First of all, we started with our privacy cafes as an alumni event, and so a lot of you people in the room here did take our courses. We started also with a Stay Tuned session, and Stay Tuned is actually a course where data protection officers can come 4 times a year, both in French and Dutch, and they learn about GDPR and how it is in practice. It's actually about the decisions of the data protection authorities that we will discuss during these sessions. So we have them for more than 2 years now. It's quite a success. We have 200 DPOs who are subscribed. Although there are some DPOs who are working in a more international environment, and for these DPOs we will start in October with the international session of the Stay Tuned, and there we will focus more on the authorities outside Belgium, the Data Protection Authority in Belgium. We will put more focus on the international data protection authorities, and even abroad Europe, the new trends in our privacy landscape abroad Europe. So that's the goal. We will start our sessions here in Brussels in October, and there is a discount code when you get the flyer, which is in the room next. There you can find the flyers with the discount code on it. In the Privacy Cafe, actually, it's free of charge for all of you. But we have some sponsors. We have sponsors who will sponsor vacature, and it will be here a Dutch one of the Belgian notary. And they have, or they are looking for some legal people, 2 kinds. We have experienced people and legal advisors. So if you are interested, you can look at their website. They have there an offer for you to make for all who are interested. If you want to promote your own vacancy, you can always contact us for one of our next privacy cafes. The next one will be in October. And then a special thank for our sponsors. And as you already noticed, I think to get a beer you have to pass a sponsor. We have Responsum, actually for people who are looking for a solution for all the GDPR compliance, but a solution that is easy to use. I think Responsum can be a solution for you. Real CGR, it's a little bit related to NIS2. Actually, it's a tool to manage the crisis if you have business continuity issues or you want to prepare for business continuity. This tool will help you. And then Play It Secure is more on the focus of awareness, and actually is a combination of gaming and awareness. So this about our sponsors. Much thanks for them. I also put into focus Das Privé. Das Privé is also one of the booths here, and they have their well-known podcast, and I think lots of people here in the room already listen to the podcast. It's in Dutch, so only in Dutch at the moment, but you should speak to Bart to perhaps do it in English or in French too. Okay, that is the introduction. Valerie, I will give you the word. You are working for the Cybersecurity Center in Belgium, and you are following for Belgium all the related stuff to NIS2. So we wonder what is new for us and what we have to know of NIS2. There is some audience here. We have the mics, and I hope the discussion will be a little bit more interactive. So if you have questions, please do not hesitate. Actually, it's a cafe style, so Valerie prepared some slides, but you can pick in and ask your questions. Valerie, the word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation first. It was a little bit a last-minute call, but the subject was worth giving some elements on it. So I think it's interesting also for people working in privacy, because it has a linked, the both regulations are complementary to each other. So it's quite interesting to understand what's actually moving or changing in the NIS framework. So maybe first, just a small sondage or survey to see how many people here in the room, and raise your hand, have already heard of NIS. Okay, so we already have a quite good audience first that at least has a few knowledge of what we try to talk today. So I'll speak on SEN for part of the elements, because the texts are not adopted and published yet, but a lot of elements have been already agreed at the political level, so we can already start discussing on it. It doesn't mean I have all the answers. I have myself still a lot of questions more than answers, but the idea is to try to exchange a little bit on the subject and be free at the end to pose question or to share our thoughts. Just maybe for those who don't know what's the Center for Cybersecurity Belgium, it's a federal administration under the Prime Minister, and we are the national coordination authority for the NIS regulations, so cybersecurity, security of network and information system and so on. Okay, and we also have the role of national CSOT, but I will explain that along the way. To give you a small idea of the different elements I wanted to talk to you, first of all, a little bit of the context, the entity concerns, security measures, notification, supervision, and also the interaction with other EU regulation. So first, the context. Cybersecurity and the cybersecurity strategy at the EU level and the cyber threat has been increasing, and it was seen that the first attempt with the NIS1 directive was a little bit lacking in the way that different member states have different ways to implement it. Also, the scope was quite limited at first, and it actually was a regulation a little bit specific, because it let each member state decide and identify the operators that would fall under the obligation. So that was a little bit difficult, to implement exactly the same thing at the EU level if you let each member state decide exactly who would be identified. And it's not a secret for all of the person that, for example, in Belgium for the health sector, actually there was no operators identified as essential. So no hospitals, no entity has been identified. It doesn't mean that they don't do anything and that there is no collaboration on it, but nobody was included in the NIS framework as identified operators. So let you know what's a few of the lacks. The different sectors that were already covered in NIS1 were the energy sector, drinking water, transport, banking, financial market, digital infrastructure, and there was a difference between operators of essential services, and digital service providers. So there was different framework legal regime between the two. Means that the digital service provider has more rules at the EU level, and the other entities as more based on national approach. So in Belgium, we transpose the directive by the law of 7 April 2019. It creates a framework with several competent authorities. So there is the coordination authorities, which is the Center for Cybersecurity, where I work. You have different sector authorities who are responsible for the identification of the entities, the supervision, and also dealing with us when you have a crisis, when you have an incident. Everything is also linked at the EU level. So if there is an incident or if there is an impact for another member states, it's meant that the Center for Cybersecurity create the link with other national competent authorities. The actual process to identify the operators are based on a collaboration between the Center for Cybersecurity, the Crisis Center Sector Authority, to get to a list of entities. For NIS 1, there was no major extension from the directive. Only for the financial sector, it was a little bit wider than what it was in the directive, but not much extension there. One of the elements that was first in the first proposal of the transposition was to include the public sector, which was not finalized at the end. But you will see that with the NIS 2, that issue should be solved, because there will be, it will be mandatory to include the public sector in it. Also, there was a link between the NIS regulation and also the critical infrastructure regulation, which was another law of 2011. And the principles was that there is also a link between the two. So when you are identified as critical infrastructure, you should be also identified as NIS operators, unless you're not in one of the sector NIS, for example, the telecom at the moment. But you will see with NIS 2 that the telecom will also be added in the NIS framework, or a few infrastructure where they don't use IT, but it's more theoretical than anything else. The NIS law was giving a time frame to implement the measures, to put in place the whole process, which is actually in running at the moment. So entities that had been identified are in the process of doing their internal audit, external audit, and to fully implement the whole system. And you will see that will have an impact also with the new regulations. The new directive, so NIS 2, is based on three main pillars. You have the capabilities of the national entities. You also have the risk management, which is here clearly mentioned. It was part of the security measures, but now it's clearly mentioned and in more details. Also, it will include accountability for the top management of the entities. You have more details on the security measures that the entity will have to comply with and to put in place, and also on a notification. And also, it's increased the cooperation at the EU level. So it's breaking news now, because we had just reached a political agreement on the text. The proposal was made in December 2020. And normally the timing, but it will depend, of course, on the date that the text will be adopted and enter into force, should be 21 months to implement the directive. So the first question is, who are the entities concerned? The system that I just explained with the identification will be put aside. So it will be more a definition that is in the text. and if you fall in the sectors and the type of entity that are in the annex, you will fall in the framework. You have also to take into account the size of the entity. So there is a sort of size cap. If you are a large entity or medium entity, you will fall in the scope, and then depending on the size, you will fall in the essential category or the important category. And only the micro or small entities will fall out unless they have been specifically identified or if they fall in specific categories. So there is specific rules. So it's really something to go into more details to exactly define who is in scope or out scope. Also, don't forget that's only the minimum harmonization at the EU level. So it doesn't mean that at the Belgium level there will now be in inclusion or more entities included in the scope. Also to take into account that there is a few lex specialis, so specific regulation, for example, for the financial sector. You will have a specific European regulation called DORA that will apply, which would mean that they will not be covered fully by NIS, but more by DORA. And I will explain a bit the difference between essential and important entities. To give you an overview of the new sectors that have been added in the NIS framework, you have the space sector, the public administration, ICT service management, wastewater. That's for the essential entities, and for the important entities, you have manufacturing, production or distribution of chemicals. You have the waste management, postal and courier services. And when I talk about manufacturing, I talk about also food distributions. Okay. So that's only a proposal prospect of how we can implement or transpose the NIS2 directive, because there is already entities that have been identified. For them, we want to keep them in scope, no matter what the new rules will be. And if they have or have been identified as really providing an essential service, it means that we can create for them a subcategory which would require probably stricter rules or stricter security measures, for example. So the idea would be probably to have 3 types of category: the essential entities, within another subcategory, vital entities and important entities. So here we have a few numbers of roughly estimation, but it's really rough because we need really to go into deep to analyze who would fall in the different definition and the different size cap, and also we will have to need to have a sort of registration system where the entities can declare themselves as entities, NIS entity or new NIS entities. So that's still something to check and to see in details. It's also important to take into account on which basis the entity will be linked to the Belgium NIS implementing law. So it means that anytime you have an establishment in Belgium, then you will fall, at least for the services provided from that establishment, you will fall under the NIS law in Belgium. There are some specific rule for other entities. I will not go into the detail for all of them, but know, for example, that some entities, DNS, tilde domain, and so on, they will be linked with the main establishment in the EU. So one of the key elements is to know a bit more about the security measures, and that's where I think the privacy GDPR can be linked really with NIS. It's when you protect your asset, you protect your security, you increase your cybersecurity, you protect your data, your personal data. So it's clearly complementary to each other. So the proposal states that you need to have the governance in place, the risk management measures. Also, you need to have a management of the vulnerabilities, which is linked also to something that I will explain to you, which is one of the projects that we have been pushing. It's to promote the adoption of coordinated vulnerability disclosure policies. I hope some of you have already heard of this. I will explain a little bit more. The fact that you need the top management to be involved in it, to also have regular training for the staff and for the entity and the top management including. And also the fact that the top manager needs to be accountable, and also regarding to sanctions. Okay. Cybersecurity risk management measures. So they are more specific and more explicit. You have here a few elements that are taking into account the state of the art, the cost of the implementation, the proportionality, including technical and organizational measures. So both the management and both really the technical teams need to be involved in the process, and including also human resources on security, access control, and so on. The question here will be, in practice, how we will guide the entities to respect that legal requirements. With this one, we have, as much as possible, tried to stay technology neutral and norm, or technical norm neutral. Means that if you have the accountability that you can prove actually that you put the measures in place, no matter what the technical norms that you use, you can be compliant. It's not just a question of the norms that you use, but it's more on the fact that you can demonstrate or you can explain based on your actual situation that you put the level of the security measures in place. But we have also in this one indicate that if the entity has a certification ISO 27001, which is not mandatory, they can have a presumption of conformity as long as the certification has been operated by a conformity assessment body accredited by BELAC or another entity at the EU level. And that's the scope of applicability of the certification is indeed the essential service that are covered here. So probably the Center for Cybersecurity will probably put on a website a sort of cyber guide or cyber measures that would be recommended to follow. Another element that I already mentioned earlier was the fact to adopt a coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. So in other words, it's a policy that an entity put on its website, declare that if you follow the following rules, a researcher can actually try to attempt to access the system and inform you of the vulnerability that he has discovered. The whole process, if it is published and well drafted by the entity, can be a legal, coordinated, and responsible way to deal with people that find vulnerability in the system. Here, the directive explicitly mentioned that the national CERT, so that's some of the national entities, could play a role to ease the process or to be an intermediary between the researcher and the concerned entity. So if there is a lack of communication, so the national CERT doesn't have to be involved every time, but if there is an issue or problem, a lack of communication, we can jump in and we can help ease the process and find a solution and try to patch the system to solve the issues, okay? It doesn't mean that all the vulnerability needs to be disclosed. That's not the aim of the process. It's more on the fact to protect the system, to patch the system, and to share the information at the technical level, but it doesn't mean that each time it needs to be disclosed.
Valerie, I have a question.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think hacking is an illegal act. You cannot do it in Belgium. But here I see something about responsible disclosure. What is the relationship for Belgium? And how shall things evolve?
Yeah, interesting question. So the fact that you access to a system without an authorization, it's actually illegal. It's a crime. Even though you have good intention and even though the system is unsecure. But actually, if you have the authorization of the concern or the owner of the system, it's not a crime anymore because it's a sort of contract, a security contract. Like when you do a pen testing or when you do an audit, a security audit, well, you have a sort of contractual agreement between the researcher, the pen tester, and the entity, which means that it's not anymore an unauthorized access. And on the other side, but it's more a proposal at the moment, the Center for Cybersecurity has also raised an issue to try maybe to create a legal framework outside of just a contractual proposal. But yeah, it's just a few of the proposals now. But I invite you to go and have a look on our website with the brochure, and we have a template of policy and more legal and practical information on the subject if you are interested. How would be dealt the incident? So the incidents that are foreseen in the NIS regulations are incidents that have a significant impact in the provision of the service. So each entity is falling in the scope because they provide a service, a specific service. If that service is impacted, they need to notify it as much as possible without undue delay. With the first initial notification in the 24 hours. It doesn't mean that you have to fill in the whole form. If you first inform and you give a first quite brief information that there is an incident going on. And also don't forget here that the notification in the NIS framework, it's also meant to help the entity concerned. So you can request the help of the CERT or technical team to assist you in the crisis management, on technical issues related to the incident. Where sometimes the notification in GDPR can be more for compliance reason, post-mortem analysis or statistics. Here we're talking about maybe if there is a cyber incident linked to electricity providers, well, you have a national crisis at the moment, so you need to do something. It's not just something you can postpone a little bit. It includes also the fact that if some information are interesting for other sectors or other entities, there will be a sort of system of information sharing with the whole NIS entities. And we have at the moment a system called early warning system, where the entity that has been identified as NIS operators can have a log and receive specific or filter information on cyber threat, cyber incident that can be relevant for them. You will have also a more formal incident notification within 72 hours based on the assessment of the incident with more information, and then you will have a timing for give a full final report within 1 month. I find the lack of cybersecurity disturbing. What do we do then to make sure that we implement? The whole purpose of the regulation, it's not to give fine. It's not to give sanction to the entity. But of course, within the process, at one moment or another, you need to have sanction and you need to have different measures that you can take to make sure that the entity is putting all the security measures in place. So the existing framework at the moment for the supervision is that each year the entity has to do an internal audit. It's a sort of self-assessment. The entity can do it himself or they can use an audit company, doesn't matter. After that, so they exchange the information from the internal audit with the inspection service, which is different for each sector. Then you have an external audit that needs to be done every 3 years. And this audit has to be done by an entity who has been accredited by BELAC or another European equivalent institution. Then you have an inspection service that can actually do at any time an inspection and can ask question or go for deep analysis of the security measures put in place. It can give a formal notice. It can give a delay to comply with the information, transmit the information to the sector authority. Sometimes the inspection service, it's not exactly the sector authority, so sometimes there is a communication between themselves. And then the sector authority can decide actually to give sanction if needed. You have here a few, but it's just for information, the different penalties that are actually existing now in the NIS framework one. For the NIS 2, the sanction that I mentioned, it's also fines, warnings, binding instruction, a public statement of non-compliance. But here, the administrative fines needs to be at least, as a minimum, for each entity at the EU level. Of course, it's always needs to be proportionate, so it will depend on each cases. But they mention a maximum or at least 10 million euro or 2% of the total worldwide annual turnover. So the sanctions are quite higher than what it is now. You can see also that depending on the type of category that you fall in, actually you will have a lower, and I just noticed that I just made a mistake. The essential entities needs to be the same as vital entities, essential, so I will make the correction. But the important entities have a lower minimum fine. So the main difference between essential entities and important entities are the sanctions, and also the fact that the inspection needs to be for an essential before and after an incident or an issue. And for important entities, they call it only ex supervision and not ex ante supervision. Of course, NIS framework doesn't exist on its own. It's linked with another whole scope of legislation, including the GDPR, also the EPSIP directive, which is the critical infrastructure law in Belgium, which will also be replaced in the future by the SER directive. But it's more linked to physical infrastructure than only cyber, but cyber is one of the elements also. Just to mention that a few national security legislation are outside of the scope. For example, classified information, nuclear information are outside of scope. I think it doesn't... voilà, okay. Other regulation that also are quite interesting and are linked with the NIS framework. One of them is the EIDAS regulation. You know that there will be a new EIDAS regulation soon. Cybersecurity Act. Cybersecurity Act is cybersecurity certification, which will also be a solution for the different entities within the NIS scope to show the compliance with the use of cybersecurity certification. You have the directive on whistleblower, which also apply to NIS regulation. So it means if someone finds a violation of the NIS framework, they can be protected under the whistleblowing directive. For the energy sector, you will have the network code that will apply. That's for the next slide. And here you have the network of National Coordination Center. It's more for the research and development to create a stimulation within the EU on cybersecurity. Here you have a landscape of the other regulation to take into account. You will see it's quite dense. As I said, Cyber Religion Act will be also something quite important in the future. The Commission is talking about it, and there is a public consultation on it. It means it will bring cybersecurity requirements for ICT product, so for computers, for phone, for any type of equipment. There will probably be in the future cybersecurity requirements at the EU level. So if you want to enter the EU market, you will have to be compliant at least to that regulation. So it will have a huge impact. And also Digital Service Act and other elements, RED, 5G, and the network code of cybersecurity for the electricity flow. So time now, I'm done. It's more for you for question and to reflection or other elements, knowing that I don't have all the answer yet on the subject, but maybe we can talk about it.
Perhaps I will start with one question, Valerie. I think for a lot of people, this NIS2 will be about, is it applicable for me, yes or no? And what do I have to do then when this law becomes applicable for me? But in some perspective, you can ask the question, why is this not a regulation? Do you think there will be a NIS3, which will be then more regulation than it is a directive? Because the consequences of a directive will be that there are some dialects in each country, and that it will be difficult to implement.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very good question. You know, with a few EU regulation, it started step by step with directive and then regulation. One of the discussion was with the Commission was, do they do a directive or do they choose to do a regulation? There was still a lack of consensus to do a regulation at the moment, and also linked with the fact that some members wanted to go a little bit beyond what is the existing framework. But who knows, maybe it would make sense in the future to have a regulation instead of the directive, because one of the reasons to go for a new directive was the differences between member states. But if you stay with the directive, you will remain with difference between member states. So probably in the future that could be an evolution. Also maybe to take into account, that's the reason why I wanted to go back to this slide, is the fact that the supply chain security, so direct supplier, are explicitly mentioned. So even if the entity is not concerned, the supplier of the entity will be concerned in one way or another, at least because they supply a NIS entity. So it will have a wider impact than just the entity directly mentioned in the annex. I think there was a few questions.
Yep.
Attends.
Yeah.
Hello. The question being, in NIS2, the number of sectors has been expanded. You already mentioned, for instance, also food distribution. But, for instance, last week I read a report, I believe, of the Cambridge University stating that perhaps even agricultural or food processing itself should be included. For instance, if you take in the United States, the UBS meat processing plant was hacked, ransomware. Suddenly there was a shortage of meat. The baby formula, that wasn't a hacking, but it points to the extreme concentration in particular crucial nodes in food processing. And also I read about, for instance, deer, the harvesters and the agricultural machines. Quite often they're becoming automated, even GPS steered. So clearly, it would be quite possible if you take, for instance, Ukraine, where you have huge acreages of wheat, etc. If you sabotage the harvest, suddenly you can be wreaking havoc from distance. So wouldn't it perhaps be interesting still yet to extend the number of sectors, for instance, including agriculture, for instance, including food processing, because clearly food distribution is interesting, but if you don't process it, if you don't grow it, what do you have to distribute?
Do you want to take all the question and then answer, or long? Okay. So yeah, the food industry is covered, at least in part. I need to go into review to make sure for the agriculture, but I'm not sure it's included. I don't think so. But at national level, it could be included. And probably some countries will do, because I know there was a will for some countries to include it. Then it will be a decision by the parliament and the government to see if they include it. But it would make sense. Then to what extent they should be, or what type of entity should be in scope, that is another question. But it would make sense. It can have a direct impact for the society, the economy, indeed.
But I think it's an interesting question that leads to the next subject, of course. But I think there is another question.
Hello, my name is Daniela Simenovic. I'm from Romania. I represent DPinstitute. I have more concern regarding the disclosure of the vulnerabilities. According to NIS 1, for example, in Romania, the national body, before disclosing a security incident and the context and the consequences and so on, first consulted the operator and to agree to what to make public and what not, because for obvious reasons you can't disclose or make public all the vulnerabilities, with all due respect for the transparency. Because there are sectors, there are bodies, operators that are more than essential operators, provide more than essential services, and you can't expose them to further more attacks or risks or something like this. So I see that the NIS directive seems a little bit more prone to transparency than protection. Or I didn't catch it well?
So there's two things to distinguish. First is an incident. If there is an incident and the information linked to an incident, there is a legal obligation to share the information with the national authority. And then when the information are anonymized and not linked to a specific entity, to share it with EU member states or other sectors. That's one thing for an incident, and normally it doesn't include the fact to make it public. The incident doesn't have to be public. There was a few NIS incidents in Belgium. You are not aware of all of them. I mean, they have not been made public. Okay, so it means that we keep the information as long as it's not necessary. Within the confidentiality of the framework. Then you have new provision here in NIS 2 related to coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy, which is a little bit different. Both can be linked, but it's a little bit different because there it's required for each entity to create a framework where they collaborate with ethical hackers. Okay, and in that collaboration framework, it's not required that the information gathered within the process needs to be made public. In some cases, they will need to be shared with the national CSIRT, but they will not be necessarily public. If at one stage the information is of public interest and there is a patch available, and I mean it's public information, it's already there on internet. well, it's a public information and we can give advisories on it. We can inform entities to protect them with all the information interesting or the patch and so on. And then it became public, but it doesn't have to be public.
Thank you very much. I would have another question, if you don't mind. Regarding the identification of the operators. You said, for example, in Romania, this problem was apparently solved by establishing the threshold criteria. And for example, the health sector is 0, no value. So all the operators in the health system are falling underneath. No matter how big it is, no matter if it's, I don't know, a dentist with only one unit that doesn't use, as Article 6 from our internal law, NIS law, says that there are 3 conditions that have to be fulfilled cumulative. So it doesn't matter if one of them is not fulfilled, just because that operator provides essential services in the health system, falls under NIS. So that made easier for the operators to identify themselves and declare themselves to the national body. But on the other hand, it really created an awkward situation. So how would NIS2 solve this? Would be again at the latitude of the national bodies, regulatory bodies, to establish this kind of thresholds?
Here, the solution that I mentioned is maybe to create a subcategory within the essential entities, which then would be more critical or more vital. And in that category, you will maintain a sort of identification. So the entity that will fall in the scope could be sometime re-identified as a more strict category for which we require more. So we can ask them more security measures, more process, more sanction than the other, because they are more critical, and so it's more important for them than the other entity. So we can make there a distinction because, for example, for small entities with a few patients, it doesn't make sense. For dentists, for example, it's not the same requirements that you need to impose to a large group hospital. So it makes sense to make the difference.
Okay, I will. Okay, thank you very much. And I think also the last question, it gives a little bit of information that it will be difficult again to identify the services. It will be something that we already know of this one. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you very much, Valerie, for your presentation. And then we have a little break of 10 minutes to get the panel ready for the next presentation. So within 10 minutes you can get a beer. Just for your information, it's interesting to come in front and to sit here. I see that it is reserved, but actually it's not. So you can sit in the front because we will also have a little tasting with a few of you. Not everyone can taste during the session, but there will be some glasses to taste, and that will be for the people who are sitting in the front. So, okay. Okay, good evening and welcome again. When we were preparing the Privacy Café of May now, we were trying to have a session that is not too theoretical. And it must be, or some elements must be privacy, of course, data protection. And another one was, because we are a privacy café, must be beer. And when I started to explore the subject a little bit more, I was thinking, can you make beer out of data? Can you use data to make beer? That was actually the question. And that was a starting point to ask a panel with specialists. and to have this question asked at the end of the evening. But then I needed a moderator, of course, and I think the Flemish people will know Tim, I think, of the Belgian broadcast television, where he makes television programs regarding data protection, privacy, and stuff like that. So Tim, I think I will give you the word. You can present the panel, and then we will have the starting there. I think it also can be an interactive discussion at some point. And at the end, we have a little present, and I spoke about it before the break.
I don't know.
But yeah, we will see how things go. Tim, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. Good evening, everybody. Hope you had a great, inspiring day. We're going to keep it light informative tonight. It's already 8:30. I'm going to present to you the panelists, the wonderful panelists. Sofie Vanrafelghem, which is a master beer sommelier. You're also a member of the jury of the World Beer Cup, right? Jan Paesen, managing director of Mindgate, founder of Beerhive. Yes. And Eugenio Mantovani, you're a researcher at the VUB, but also you have a background also in DPI lab concerning data protection assessments, etc., etc. And we're going to try to ask or respond to one question tonight. Can you make a better product by using data? But first of all, Sofie, we have wonderful beers here in the room. First things first. Normally, when you drink a beer, it depends. Like 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, it's like slow. 3, 4 o'clock in the night, you might be like speeding up the tempo. What is like the most or the best way to like taste a beer? For this, for example, I have a Jambon de Bois.
Yes,
how do you taste a beer?
Start.
For people in the room, you have a beer, try it.
Well. There are some similarities to wine tasting, but also some important differences. And I don't want to discourage you, but beer tasting is actually a little bit more difficult than wine tasting. But don't worry, keep on practicing, and you'll get there.
Okay.
Thing is, what's most important, if you look at the beer, our beers have beautiful colors, and even the foam like this, you see, it's really has a refined bubbles, and it's clinging to the glass. That's just perfect. It's also an indicator of good and stable quality beer. And then, of course, the nose. The nose is probably the most important with beer because you can discover many more aromas than any other alcoholic beverage. So if you smell the beer and you smell something, that can't be true. Maybe it can. But it's really important. You can notice the hops, the yeast, or even other ingredients and so on. And then you have to take a sip. And also, one important thing, we have the foam, and the foam covers up a little bit of the aromas always. So take a sniff, but when the foam disappears, waltz it around like you do with a glass of wine, and then sniff again, and you'll discover even more. And something important as well, take a sip, and don't spit it out. It's too precious. No, of course, when we are judging at the beer competitions, and you have to judge 40, 50 beers, of course we spit it out. But it's important to recognize the certain flavors and to get a total picture of the beer, to take a sip and notice how is the mouth feel, how do you notice the sweetness, bitterness, or sourness. And take your time.
Okay, take your time tonight. It's a huge business, the beer business. If I look around, I live in Brussels. There was like one brewery like a few years ago. Now they're like popping up all over the place. Take me there. How big is the beer business nowadays?
It's incredibly, actually. Here in Belgium, it exploded like Brussels. We have so many, like there are now starting 3 new breweries again in Brussels. I can't keep up. We have now 412 breweries in Belgium, and the number keeps going up. And to compare, just a few years ago, we had about 200 breweries, so it's going up, 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 up. But we're actually the country that grows the slowest at that rate. Yes, I know it's strange to say as a beer country, but like France has now approximately 1,000 850 breweries, and in the 70s they only had 30 breweries. So that's a wine country. Why? Because beer is great.
Okay.
No, the people are rediscovering beer as a product to enjoy, and not only to really binge beer. Not only in Belgium, but in different countries, you see this evolving. There's also more appreciation for local produced drinks, and beer is one of them. And then, the beer is getting more popular and popular. It's also quite a pure product. People often talk about some mass-produced beers like this is a chemical beer. That's actually not correct. It's sometimes badly brewed, but it can't be full of chemicals. That just doesn't exist. The quality in beer generally is quite high, and I love it that people are discovering this beautiful product.
Great. There is, when we come to the topic of this conversation, there's like a huge industry, but also a tremendous amount of data. How is the industry using this kind of data in apps? They're also using artificial intelligence to brew beers, etc. What is your take on that huge, tremendous amount of data that's going on, that's flowing right now?
It's true, and a lot of breweries are using that data right now, and I think it's good, it's important. Consumer feedback is really important.
What kind of data is there?
It's mainly from the beer apps, but also through social media as well. You can set it up on your page even to get the feedback and so on. But through the apps like Untapped, that's the most popular one right now. There are numerous beer drinkers checking in their beer experience, sharing them, and brewers, I think if they can easily find patterns, they can easily see if and when there's something wrong with the beer as well, and then they can correct it. So that's great. That's a great part of it. On the other hand, yes, we don't know what's happening with all the data, and sometimes it's even misused as well. Then, like Rate Beer was the main source. Like Rate Beer was the site that was responsible for making Best Vleteren world famous overnight in 2005. And then, of course, it was bought by ABI. So there are some questions about that, but it's true.
What do you mean there are some questions about that?
That why did they buy Rate Beer? What is happening with all that data? And I think a lot of consumers check in the data and don't know what's happening with it. I think if you work with smaller beer apps, you're in a safer environment. But on the other hand, I see brewers using that data to correct their beer sometimes. That they are accepting that this beer is probably like infected, or that there's something horribly wrong with the re-fermentation or so, and they are listening to the consumers and correcting it. That didn't happen 10 years ago. So that's.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Yes. I think we have Untapped. They have also a website. Maybe, I don't know how many people in the room use a beer app. Use one, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one? Untapped. Untapped. All Untapped. It's the most popular one.
Yes.
Yes. How many users?
I don't know the number.
Yeah.
6 million.
6 million users.
It exploded in a few years.
Yeah.
And you can check in. Also, you can find venues.
There we have it Untapped, yeah.
And they have like some neat features, and you can collect badges and so on. And they also they have incentives to even compete with each other. But it's becoming a bit extreme. Like in beer festivals, if you sometimes go to a beer festival, you'll know what I'm talking about. You see people just looking and checking and they go into a brewer and they ask, give me a little bit of all your beers, and they just take one sip just to have so many beers checked in to get another badge.
Yeah.
I think maybe they should talk to the brewer and ask them, where does this flavor come from? Why did you brew the beer? Because that's an important part of it.
I don't know, the people who use Untapped in the room, do you talk to the brewer, or is it about gamification and earning medals?
Talk to the brewers if you're smart about it. If you go to the Belgian beer festivals, especially when the brewers are there, totally talk to the brewers. And then you learn all the cool stuff about the brewery.
True.
And then they'll tell you, beer is my favorite
It's great. Yeah, Jan, can you take me to the back office of Untapped? How many data is gathered? Who is buying the data? What's happening on the other side?
Well, they have developed a whole business model. So, for instance, if you're a venue, so I'm a shop in Brussels and I'm selling beer, I can buy a venue on it. It costs €650 a year, more or less. And basically, it's generating a lot of traffic to your shop because tourists come to Brussels. They will say, "What's the best place to buy beer or drink beer?" And it's a very good marketing tool. It's a very good marketing tool. The only thing and the little problem we had, because the app we developed came out of a frustration using Untapped, is it's a very rating-based app, meaning people just check in beers and they give 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever. But an average doesn't tell you anything about your personal taste. So the fact that on average a beer is considered a good beer doesn't mean that you will like it, because you have a very personal taste. Mm-hmm. And hence we thought about how do we bring in data to solve this issue.
Okay. Can you show me the other app that is ratebeer.com is owned by?
RateBeer is owned by ZX Venture, which is a company of AB InBev. And AB InBev, you all know it's the biggest brewery in the world. As Sofie mentioned, what they do with the data is very unknown. They had the day that RateBeer was bought by AB InBev, we saw a big peak in our app on downloads. So quite a lot of beer tasters, they were leaving the app. AB InBev for some is the big evil.
And they bought it in
I think 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes, 2016, I think.
Yeah.
And then it was a minority share, and since 2019, it's fully owned.
Okay. Nice. Before we go into taste, Eugenio, just one quick question, or not a quick question, Jan. You also created an app, but it's like slightly different than RateBeer and Untapped. Can you show us or explain a little bit more about?
I don't know. Maybe with the presentation, because an image says more than 1,000 words. I'll take the clicker. So basically, our frustration was we didn't want to start from an experience which was very rating based. Most often there is a reason why you like a beer, because there is a certain aroma you like or a certain combination you like. So basically what we do, so Beehive is the most beautiful community in nature. So we created an app called Beerhive. So it's a community of beer tasters. We only have 6,000 tasters on our platform, but they all take the time to really illustrate what we're doing. I'm just going to give an example here. You see here the best triple in the world. It's also available here at the bar, which is the Westmalle. And basically what you do is you see the app there and you see the spider chart, and you can just indicate what you are tasting, how sweet is this, how fruity this is. I can go to a binary, so I said if I swallow it, how long does it stay in my mouth? So you have to be a bit of an experienced taster. And then, for instance, these are the aromas. So I taste some fruity aroma, and typically in the Westmalle is the banana taste. That they call it also the banana beer. What happens is basically so people are entering this, and we've developed an algorithm that's gonna score you. How good are you as a taster? So we started with a community of 50 really good tasters, experienced tasters. So you come on the platform, you taste, and we will see how you will deviate from these experienced tasters. If you systematically don't deviate a lot, most probably you're a good taster. So the community is making itself smarter and smarter. So we now have 6,000 users on this, of which about 470 something are really, really good tasters. So we know that if they put in an analysis, we're pretty sure that their taste is good. You have a question?
Can I ask if you're using BJCP guidelines or using something else?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No idea.
Sorry?
Explain, what are they?
These are guidelines for beer judges.
Oh yeah, sorry,
from the States.
Basically what we did is we translated those sheets into something that had to be compact. But what we did as well is we did a data scan from Untapped, and what are the taste parameters that are not in those sheets, but that come back often as well. So we don't use the wheel, we developed our own taxonomy. So based on data as well, because we thought that certain tastes were missing. Okay. So basically what we do then, so we will score you as a taster, And then basically, if you're a good taster, you count more in the group average, and that's what you will see here. This is the group average that was built by the community of a Westmalle triple. Now we have, in this way, we have described the beer in 120 parameters. Some are binary, yes, no, there is banana, yes, no, there is lychee. Some are value driven, so the sourness is on a scale of 5, it's 4, for instance. And what we do then, mathematically, we're going to calculate all the distance between all these points in an eclectic model. And then you have similarity. So this is mathematical similarity. So we, based on what you say, if you say, I like a duvel, then we can say mathematically, most probably you will like this, this, and this as well, because it has the same taste profile. So it's not based on, as Untapped does the average person like a duvel? It's based on pure, a description of the sensory things you have, that analysis you have in 120 parameters. So that's basically what we did.
The basic what you do. You have also an offline component, right, in stores?
Yes, we didn't have a business model yet. It was more like an intellectual exercise. We wanted to play a bit with technology and also with data. And then the business model came afterwards. So basically what we did, I'll show you, is so we developed a more easy to use interface, and you will see it in the video. Oh, it's not working. No, it's not working. So basically what we did, we developed a kind of, oh, there it goes. So I think you're pushing the play.
Yep. There was almost something happening.
Yeah, it's not moving. Anyhow, what was the challenge that quite a lot of beer shops have in Belgium? So this is in Prik and Tik. A small Prik and Tik has 800 something different beers. There are some that have 2,000. So it's quite a lot of a big challenge for the staff to give a recommendation or personalized advice. So based on the data, if a customer says, well, I'm looking for beer for my father, then based on our data, you can say, yeah, what beer does your father like? If it's, for instance, the answer is Duvel, then you can say, well, these 5 beers, they taste-wise, they're very similar to Duvel, and most probably your father will like those. So based on the data, we've built a recommendation engine. Recommendation engine is also used in the meantime in several web shops as a back-end recommendation tool.
So you go into a store, you click on...
you have like this poll. It's like a kiosk. And you can say, for instance, I want a sweet beer that has some sherry aromas. The interface is more simple than I just showed you. And then the poll will say, well, in this shop, these 5 beers, they meet your selection criteria. And by the way, we will guide you in the rayon where it is. And so we will launch a small IoT device, and a small light starts flickering.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
You are collecting also a huge amount of data. You brewed also a beer, but we'll go into that later on. Eugenio, I'm seeing you taking notes on several topics, also when it comes to taste, etc. What is your take on what's been said here already?
Yeah, I'm going to launch data brewing protection. It sounds nice. But, well, it's perfect, it's beautiful. It seems to me that you're not challenging the rights of the data subject or the consumer, though there are, of course, also you processing data, there are some legal frameworks, I guess, that you may take into account, and probably, but these I'm not sure that we want to get into that, some ethical consideration about what is taste. Is it taste private? Is it public? Can we play with that? How far can
that's an interesting question, Eugenio, because you mentioned it last week when we called, like how private is taste and how far can you play with it?
Yeah, exactly. But I was discussing with my friend here, and but there are different shades of privacy. Of what is private? So taste is both private and public. It is, of course, I want to show, and I have no problem in showing what I like and I don't like, in order to flag also to my tribe or to the people what I like, what I don't like, so I can be pleased. There are some information my taste that I would like to keep inside hidden. So, for instance, a classical case is taste in sexuality. There are there are maybe some cases where it's better not to disclose your taste. So you can claim that you are a gay person here in Brussels without no problem, so that your sexual inclination or taste, if you like, if I may say so, goes in one direction or the other, whereas when you travel to another country, you may not want that the information pops up. So taste is private and public, it depends. When we use
Depends
it.
of context.
Yeah, and then another on the context, and then the other question is that maybe here are very innocent data, and it's beautiful. You say that we have so many receptors in our mouth, and then it's so personal. You have own, so they're very innocent data, and of course, what data protection and privacy lawyers always think. Well, maybe you can. Use innocent data, compare it to a data set of a sort of profile of people having your similar inclination, and so you then end up in the profiling world. You like beer that is sweet, well, you may have also, I don't know, a proclivity to develop maybe a certain disease, so diabetes and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it depends what you do, but it seems to me that here is just fun, no? Isn't it?
Absolutely, that's very valid. You know, all the case that I think, I don't know which one of the big five it was, that they discovered that somebody was pregnant due to his changing taste behavior. They were buying different goods. A woman that is pregnant, they have a different taste pattern. But what's really interesting as well is we just did this as a fun project for beer, but we have been contacted via a company that Google is working on this as well, to do a cross category linking, meaning if I like this beer and I know that I like this chocolate and I know that I like this wine, you can start developing models where at the end, if you're looking for a certain kind of chocolate, you could say, well, most probably you will like this whiskey and you like this gin and you like this beer, and you can make all these cross, and there are models being worked on to do this kind of cross-linking, and there it becomes really dangerous, because then it's
exactly. And also, if I may,
sure.
That's one application. Then there are other applications, and you keep collecting, many kind of data. So there, it's the point. You make a choice, and that's the second consideration that I would make. You make the possibility of make a choice is what we can call free will. So being anticipated in that choice, or predicted in the choice that you're gonna make, is somehow a restriction of your free will. Again, on the condition that you really live in an infosphere, so that prediction can be somehow accurate. So you may also fall into sort of conveniency. Somebody else is taking the right decision for me, the right chocolate with the proper beer.
From your background at DPI Lab, how do you find the balance between innovation and like consumer interests?
My first thought is sometimes regulations, they hinder the small producers, those have small ideas, whereas huge corporations that have millions of data sets, they have less problems. So the DPI, I would say that it's a necessary necessary procedure you have to follow. It's legal, so it should be obligatory. When you do direct marketing and when you try to dig into the taste of people, yes, indeed, you should think, okay, what am I doing here? Am I collecting what kind of data? And then you start wondering, do I need the consent of my clients, or maybe it's just part of my business? So it's my legitimate interest to do it. Of course, I have to allow people to back off, so the right to object. And so basically you go through this sort of list of procedural items. But and one point about the data protection impact assessment that I would say in this case, here it's really the example where you want to involve not only the lawyers, which gets quite dumb, but you know, maybe sociologists or other expertise.
Absolutely.
Beer tasters, maybe.
Well, how do you look at all of this, Sofie? Because, you know, also there are like, can you give examples how breweries, developers are using data not for marketing, but like to create new products, and are they successful?
They are using more and more data to create certain new beers, and I'm a bit skeptical about it, because they notice the thing is with data, they can use it to perfect their beers. I think that's a good thing. But when they use it to create totally new beers, there are different components they sometimes forget. One is, as an example, you find the perfect beer for that audience and you want to create it. Well, it takes a lot of skill to not only create a great recipe based on these preferences and also to execute it well. A beer is the end result of, unlike wine and other alcoholic beverages, the end result really depends far more on the craftsmanship of the one who makes it than the quality of the ingredients. So that's something they not always take into account. There's a brewery in Ghent, as an example, who really are focusing on the data, create certain beers and then sell them to different clients. Like they want a triple, we have them made the best triple according to certain data, and then they sell it to other people they are brewing it for. But the other thing they forget is you need to tell the consumers how they can discover your beer. So marketing, storytelling has to have a base, and
but
before
creating a beer through artificial intelligence is a great story.
Not for the big public. No.
Not for the big public.
No,
is there a
no,
difference
no.
between like the beer community and the broader audience?
Yes, definitely. Because the data you use comes mainly from the beer apps on social media, but it's mainly dedicated beer drinkers or beer geeks even who will share this on the beer apps and so on. And it's still a small part of the beer consumers. Like through my work with retail, hospitality industry, and with lots of news and so on, I see the difference weekly on the way consumers perceive, enjoy beers. It's totally different. Like the reactions and the letters I get from readers of my articles is different than the reactions I get through my social media from really beer geeks. So it's like two other worlds. And I think when you use that data, you're only focusing on a small part of the consumers. To really have a beer liked by a big part of the public, you have to understand consumer behavior a little bit better.
So how valuable is the data that is being collected through?
Tim, sorry,
We
there's a
have
question. Yeah.
Question.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, more than a question, like I agree with you, because not just from the consumer point of view, but also employers will be very interested if employees, like which employees are really into which kind of beer. And if one employee is drinking like, I don't know, like 20 beers every Friday, every Monday, that employer is gonna take that into account. Also, if it's like seeking for a job, that employer is gonna take that into account to hire that person. Is this person an alcoholic? Is this person having a problem with alcohol? So it's not just from the consumer point of view, I agree with you, but also with employment relationships. Yeah, well, like, can someone elaborate more on this? Maybe
But,
you?
yeah, that's
because
a perfect
you said
example.
people are innocent about what companies that produce beers can assume or can conclude. At the beginning, I was thinking, like, what's the problem is if one company has my data, what's my favorite beer? But at the end, as you said, like people is sometimes innocent, so can affect your labor relationship. That's very relevant factor in everyone's lives. Thank you so much.
Does the controversial opinion that I post on Facebook influence my job position? Well, yes. We see it these days. People being thrown out because they express something that is not aligned with what the majority feels. So indeed, is what I said. There is the privacy issue. You must privare something out of the public domain, and definitely employment is one of these. Is a perfect example. No?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of people, they should also be aware of this, because, okay, you have the platform where, for instance, I can, I register myself to Untapped. I become friends with Sofie. I'm her potential employer, and I can look at her profile and I will see perfectly how many beers she had yesterday.
Yeah, okay.
But that's her choice to put it on the platform, and she knows as well that it is publicly available, and that she has to accept my becoming a friend. So I'm seeing this. But indeed, sometimes you have to protect people against themselves.
And then also something I would like to add about employment, and this is something that we should maybe reflect more deep. How many beers I drink off work is my business. It should not influence the employer as much as what I post on Facebook.
There are certain ethical questions to ask about this topic
absolutely.
and the use and everything.
I think most people are unaware that everyone can look at it, not only brewers. Like as an example, I would take myself. I years ago went onto Untapped, registered, and then immediately got some followers like big supermarkets or so on, and I thought, okay, we're not doing that. No, I want it to be private, and for me, I'm aware of that. I'm a public figure in the world of beer in Belgium, so I don't want everyone looking into my glass. What is she drinking now? But I think a lot of people are unaware, and then that's what I think. That's what I'm a little bit afraid of, that they aren't aware enough of the risks, or everyone who's looking in as well.
Are these conversations for the people on Untapped that are stimulated by being on Untapped? Like not about, hey, is it a good beer? Or are you being asked questions about, do you drink much? How much do you drink, etc.? Being on Untapped, no?
So I'm loud and I'm 6 beers in, so that helps.
Where do you work? Do you have work?
I work for a great Irish consultancy called Castlebridge.
Okay.
So my boss doesn't care, because Ireland, they drink there. I don't know if you've noticed that. That is a trend. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's an interesting question. It's a fascinating question. I'm not entirely sure that there's that many employers who are going to be that circumspect about where their employees are drinking. It is a fascinating thing that I've never really thought about, though, from a data intrinsic thing. But like my boss, it would be kind of surprising if he actually got upset about me drinking, given that he enjoys also drinking.
Yeah, but it's a question to ask, the ethical part of the site. But also an ethical part when it comes to personal nutrition. We have all these apps, all these data. What we are being nudged, but these apps, Eugenio, when it comes to a personal journey, etc., what questions are to be asked on an ethical side?
But then again, it depends. But yeah, it does depend. Yeah. So then again, another interesting discussion about that. It would be more. Personalized nutrition can also be something about really health. So you have a health problem and health issue, and you want to have some advice. So that's something. Then about personalized, so you get really what you want, what you really want. Maybe Google knows better than you, or the artificial intelligence knows it better than you yourself. And now the question to ask: do you really want that? Do you really, you know, it's kind of something is missing in between. No, it's missing there. So the, how do you call it, the delayed expectation or the unexpected that comes over. So, but I wonder whether, would you like to have a personalized beer? I mean, would you go and buy a beer that is made for team?
Yeah.
Well, I would say yes, because if you go into a pub where there is I was once on a beer festival, and there was this Scottish pub owner came to me, and he said, you know what my biggest problem is? Staff. I have 500 beers and they can't. And then if you get a personal recommendation based on some questions, what kind of beer do you like? What is your favorite beer? And based on that, you get something that matches your preferences. I would consider that as a good experience. So, and if data can help there, I would say yes.
Yeah, but there again, I must go give credit here to my friend, because we had really interesting discussion. So in Italy, you say that the best waiter is the waiter that anticipates your need. Good. So your glass is empty and it comes from the back, and you know, silent as a cat. So it's beautiful. And then you may have, okay, my line of study usually it's aging ICT, so you can have a robot companion or a robot helping an older person to, I don't know, to stand on his feet. And that's all right, you know, after all it's convenient, but do you really want to be tutored by an artificial intelligence system about what you like to drink? You want to be told by the brewer, you know?
No, but I consider it as a kind of aid for still like a personal approach, where the waiter is very personally asked questions, but he doesn't have the knowledge to know all the maybe 500 beers that are served in that pub. And then I think it's a very valuable aid. So I think I'm a strong believer in this hybrid approach to really to listen to the customer, ask questions, to ask the right questions. But it's impossible and in some pubs they make it as a differentiator. They get training. They have to be most a beer master before they can start working there. But not all pubs have those means to do so, and you can't find that staff. Yeah. And then data can help.
Okay, Sofie, you have some doubts about. You want a personal beer for yourself, only for yourself?
No, because it varies so much. It depends on the moment and the time and temperature and everything. But also, if I would have that, I wouldn't have discovered all the other styles. And what I noticed through working with like hospitality industry, but also with shops and so on, that if you let people discover different styles and flavors, that people, how do I say this correctly? People aren't always capable of really describing and knowing what they really love and want. So if you let them discover, they'll discover several. If you let them help them, aided by the brewer or a sommelier, then they can make a great choice. So I believe it can help, but the thing is, in the market we see, like in Belgium we have more than 800 label beers that are exactly the same, but just have a different label. And there we can see several beers who are exactly the same, but the one is successful in the market and the other one isn't. But it's just the same flavor, the same PR, but the story is different.
And I agree with Sofie on the context stuff, and that's something we saw in our data analysis is really, really difficult. So if you're sitting before your fireplace in the winter, or you're sitting on a sunny terrace in the summer, you have a completely different, it's a different atmosphere, and you feel like something different. And that's a very important factor. It's very difficult to model unless you ask where are you, and then you come into data privacy issues again. Well, what is the context that you're taking this beer?
You do that?
No, you don't ask the context.
Would you like to do it?
Well, actually, we consider it would make our model better, because then we know if you're sitting for your fireplace, what is your preferred beer?
At what hour of the day? And with who?
Yeah, thank you again.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think if the person is not alcoholic, then his or her friends would be really interested in to know which is the favorite beer of that person, right? Like, I guess like this person is having birthday, let's say, what would you buy for her or for him, right? So that then would be very interested. But if that person has a really big problems with alcohol, that becomes healthy issues, which is sensitive data according with the GDPR. Mm-hmm. In that case, like, would be really like a big topic, like to manage those sensitive data, because it's prohibited. Like, these beer companies are gonna, or these kind of apps are going to take advantage of the people that have a problem with alcohol, and then will manipulate them to buy more beers. So, what would be the difference, like, between non-alcoholic people with alcoholic people?
I don't, not 100% sure I understand your question, but indeed it's and that's something we played with as well. We considered introducing gamification in our app, meaning if you analyze more beers, you get rewards, being it virtual batches, or even you could say if you analyzed 100 beers, you get a reduction somewhere in a shop or something. But then you enter, I think, a very dangerous zone, which we did not take, because you should not encourage people to drink more. But again, there are quite a lot of apps who do this, so it's a very...
Is there an age limit?
There's an age limit, yes.
Okay,
you have a question too? Yes.
Yes. Hi. I'm the one who had debates with Eugenio on the topic. I think your app, as it is now, is very interesting and is very useful. But the question is, where is the data going to stay, and who will have access to it eventually? Because it's not too difficult to imagine a scenario in a few years, maybe, or even sooner, where out of convenience for the customers, you give the customer the option that the first 2-3 times maybe they go to a bar or a pub or whatever, they're happy to fill in all the different parts of the app in order to get the beer that really fits their taste. But of course, maybe the fourth time in a new bar, they're sick and tired of compiling, and they give their permission to share their beer profile with all the pubs they're going to visit. So you can gradually imagine also a scenario where whenever you enter in a bar, you're immediately offered the perfect beer. And it's surely possible for this app to take into account, as you said, weather condition, temperature, the time of the day, are you tired, are you not tired, etc. And so, I'm sure it's not a problem. The problem is if many apps of this kind come all together and work together. But the idea is, are we headed towards a world where basically you're not even allowed to surprise yourself with something new, because every need, everything you want, etc., is immediately satisfied, and every need is immediately met with.
That's a point of view that goes for many topics, I think. Do we want to still get surprised? I think, Sofie, you would say yes. Jan, you're like...
I like to be surprised on my birthday, but no. But no, it's a good discussion. So yes, I prefer to discover new stuff. But I know people as well my wife, for instance, I know that certain beers she doesn't like, and if a waiter brings this beer and she tastes it, she says, oh, very sorry, but I'm not drinking this, I don't like it. But I know already what she's gonna like and not gonna like. Again, it's a good question. In this way, is she gonna discover new beers? I don't think so. So it's a trade-off. And in very specialized shop, again, there are people doing their job really well, but there is a majority of beer pubs as well who don't have this knowledge. They're working with job students who don't have the formation to give a proper advice or ask the right questions. And I think that data-added support can help them.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us some insights what is happening with the data that you're collecting through BeerHive?
Well, all data is anonymized. We know our good tasters, and they're all called Mickey Mouse. We know who the good Mickey Mouses are and the less good Mickey Mouses. GDPR-wise, we ask for consent to use the data, but again, it's anonymized. We don't sell our data to other parties. We only do aggregation, and the aggregated data we have we do a recommendation engine. Give us, if you drink a Duvel, then you will most probably will like, because they are very similar. That's it.
Okay.
The gentleman gave me some ideas on what we can still do with the data, though.
If you do some research, you see that breweries are using machine learning like to create the best beer in the world. I'm sometimes wondering, is it the best selling or the best tasting beer?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
But you also analyzed your data to create the beer. Tell the story.
Yes, what we saw in the data, and I think it's mainly linked to what Sofie rightly said. So we see quite a lot of, in Belgium at least, we see quite a lot of beers coming, which are actually the same beers. Typically, I think every week there's a new triple in Belgium. And we saw this in our data as well. So we get the data in from our tasters and we say, well, this is almost exactly what we saw, so most probably it's going to be the same beer. So compare it to a summer evening where you have a flight of starlings and vlucht spreeuwen, and a lot of these tastes are always in the same dark.
You have it on your slides?
Yes, yeah. I have it in the slides.
You might want to show it.
Maybe show the slides. So what we did, so this is this one. Here you see a two-dimensional model. So on one hand you see the bitterness, on the other hand you see the alcohol volume. So what you see in the green there, so quite a lot of brewers in Belgium, they are brewing around 5 degrees alcohol with a low bitterness. And you can do another dimension. This is another dimension. This is alcohol versus color. So to the right you have very dark black beers, and to the left you have very light beers. So you see that the majority of the Belgian brewers, they are brewing in the space of lighter beers with alcohol around between 5 and 10. And this is very interesting because this is a two-dimensional model. So if you do this on a three-dimensional model, you get these kinds of models. But if I explained we have 120 parameters, so a 120-dimensional model is very difficult to visualize. So what we do then is we calculate the distance between all these parameters, and then you get mathematical similarity. So you have there the example again of Westmalle, and the figures you see there is the sum of all the distances between the 120 parameters. So Gijzelaarke triple resembles mathematically most to Westmalle triple. Now what we did is we reversed the model. So we said, going back to the image of the starlings, what are the empty spaces? The empty spaces are very interesting spaces. So that can mean three things. Brew technical, it's not possible to brew this combination, or this combination is not drinkable, or you have discovered a potential gap in the market that has not been brewed yet and that is liked. Yeah, but then Sofie is very right that those are theoretical models, and we came to a few, and this was the model where we said statistically this is a beer that has not been brewed yet, and that statistically the chances are pretty high that they will be liked. Yeah, but then what Sofie said is very right. This is pure theory. Yeah, the beauty is in the craftsmanship of the brewer. So you need a really good brewer to make this. It's not. It's a science. It's almost a science. It's a craft. It's chemistry. So we contacted a really good brewer who was one of the head brewers of Duvel Moordgat, and he helped us developing this theoretical recipe, which is pure data-based. And what makes it really unique, it's a very balanced sour, because there's very nice sour beers that are a very nice aperitif, but often they are too sour in combination with the vinous, so the wine-ish, champagne-like tastes. And that's basically what we brewed. So we called it Viva. Because the name came because it was in the middle of the lockdown. We were very frustrated not getting out anymore. We felt like living again. So it's an ode to life. And it's a beer that is purely based on this data, but as Sofie said, brewed by a master brewer who knows his stuff and who has the right skills to translate this theory in something which is physical.
You had panel tastings for this beer?
Yes,
or you just
I've bought 3 bottles. And I would.
I said you had panel, you had tastings.
So I would just ask if there are any people in the audience who don't like beer.
Good luck with that.
Damn. Anybody had his birthday this week? Last week? Everyone.
Yeah, your first row. You had your birthday last week.
I have 3 bottles, so
Next week.
Come on, stop bringing it out, my friend.
Can we? Can we get the beers?
Okay,
The
I have the
Americans are in
beers
the house.
here, and I have the glasses also. So I will go around. I have 10 glasses, not more than that. I think.
I have a mug.
I think she will
Welcome
get a
to
glass.
America.
I think there is also a question.
Maybe the
so
front
I will
row.
go around, and then you
maybe
can
the
go.
front row. and-
What I'll suggest, the 2 ladies that asked questions already, they for sure are in the. They're the bravest ones, so they should already are the first to taste.
And a little one for Sofie also, because I would like her to taste it. To judge it. While we hand out the drinks, is there anybody else who wanted to ask a question? Yes, go ahead.
You'll be wasting.
I will start pouring some.
Go ahead.
It's not on.
No, it's not working.
Is it possible to put the mic on? Is it possible to put the mic on for the questions?
Yes, I think so too.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was interested early on, Sophia, when you were describing how some of the people using the apps are actually becoming less sociable when they are approaching beer. So like using the app to have conversations about taste rather than talking to the brewer. And then further on in the discussion, yes please, you actually mentioned how some staff there's just too many beers for the staff to keep up. So the data in the app is like a good alternative way to have those conversations. But there's a lot of research in food environments, and I don't know if it's the same in drink environments, about how social settings improve the taste and also improve the health benefits of certain foods. So I wondered whether there's any research or whether these apps have been around long enough to show whether they actually have an impact not just on choice, like context affecting choice, but whether the datification actually affects the enjoyment of the beer itself as well. So that was my question. And then also, where can we buy Viva? It would be good.
Before you answer the question, maybe the people who are doing the audio and the video all day long, maybe they will have a drink too, I think. Yeah? Thanks for today, by the way.
Good idea.
Yes, go ahead.
It's completely true. The way you experience a beer or enjoy a beer will be influenced by where you are drinking it, when you're drinking it, and with who you're drinking it. Totally, we notice this because when we are doing blind tasting, we have to make sure that in a neutral environment and so on. And that was one of the first things I learned as well when I started tasting beer, learning about beer. We actually during my when I became a zytoloog, Beer Sommelier, one of the first things we did was a blind tasting of our favorite beers, so-called. I actually destroyed some of them, and I was completely shocked afterwards. So yes, it's true, we are influenced. There are not a lot of data and research right now, but on Untapped you can actually notice it, and a few breweries have used the data on Untapped to compare it. Because on Untapped what you do is you enter the beer, you check in, you give it a score, you can describe it in some words or some sentences, but not a lot, you don't have to. And you actually mention where you are tasting this beer. So a few breweries have compared the tasting of their beers in cafes to tasting of the beers at home. and they saw a difference in that. So yes, I think, but otherwise there's not a lot of research about it right now.
I think context is so important. How many of you have bought a bottle of wine at a very nice vineyard somewhere in Italy, and it's the best wine you've ever tasted, and you come home and you think, my God, was this the same wine? And it's about context.
Yes, yeah.
I saw Eugenio like,
Yeah, no, it's true, it's true. I agree. I agree.
There is differences between like beer on tap versus beer in a bottle.
Yeah, I talked about it with Sofie before we went out for a beer here, and it's...
Well, yeah. There's a big discussion about this always, and I get this from a lot of readers of my articles. So I was so frustrated that there were a lot of myths about it, so I wrote a piece about it. And the thing is, most beers in Belgium aren't better on tap. I know. Ooh, I know. I'll explain a little bit. It also has something to do with our beer culture as well. A lot of our beers are actually re-fermented in the bottle. We are still one of the beer countries where you find most beer re-fermented, and it actually forms a bit of the character of the body of the beer, and there's a big difference. If you ever want to taste a big difference, there's one you can taste right now, like triple Carmelite on draft or in the bottle. Big difference. Now, I don't know if that has a lot to do with them being bought by ABI, because I know they made some changes in the recipes as well, so they're not going to tell me, of course. So I'm not sure. Yes?
Duvel is also very different on tap versus...
Yes.
When you go to Duvel,
Okay.
you go to the brewery.
Okay, just a follow-up question.
It's true.
Just a follow-up question on Viva. How is Viva tasting?
Yes.
It's fucking fantastic.
I can't imagine it is. How is it tasting? You like it?
Viva la
How does it feel?
It's got a
Silky?
Yeah, it's a light sour. What we basically do is we use 40% Chardonnay grapes during the fermentation process. That gives us the taste of the grapes and the sourness as well.
So which grapes were you using?
Chardonnay.
Chardonnay, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's got a very vinous quality to it.
Yes.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of effervescence.
It is. It's very dangerous though, so be careful. It's 11.5%. Yeah, but it goes in really quick because it's really dry. It's dry as an Orval. Orval is one of the driest beers. It's completely fermented, 100%, 120% even. So it makes it it goes in really easy. But be careful.
Okay, you analyzed it, you reviewed it, Sofie, the beer of Jan.
Yes. And
what was your verdict?
One of my articles. It's actually a beautiful beer. Like, I couldn't fault it in any way. But then Jan explained about the brewer he worked with. It is one of the best brewers of the world. For me, he's a brewing wizard, Dirk.
Absolutely.
He can create amazing beer. So I loved the taste. I loved it. Of course, like data creates this beer, but then you have to go to market. People have to discover it, where and how. Now, the branding, you put a lot of effort into that with the black bottle and the golden lettering. It's noticeable in the store, so that's a big point. Yeah, pricing, yes.
Pricing is too high because at this moment we do small batches only. Batches now we start, ticking off and increase batches, so prices are going down now. So we will go to a pricing point of around 17, 18, which is I think very acceptable. If you know that the Deus, for instance, is 15 euro, which is AB InBev, then I think we had a very fair pricing point.
Yes. Yeah. The thing was for me is, and I got the same reaction after the article as well from a lot of readers, is a bottle of Old Geuze or even a bottle of champagne was cheaper than the first price, and that a consumer doesn't understand or can't compute.
To round up, you think there is a future for like this old craftsmanship of beer brewing, one of the oldest industries I think, and machine learning? When you combine this, you think there is a future for it, or is it just like doing stuff on the sideline? creating stuff on the sideline. What do you think?
I think it can be beneficial for a brewer to work more with data, because for me, consumer feedback is so important. And in the past, we saw a lot of bad brews hitting the market and so on, and not being corrected. And I think data can help with that. I think brewers are now open to listen to that. For me, I'll always be skeptical about creating the perfect beer just working with data. I think you have other components to make it successful. You need these other components, but yes.
Yes, agree. I think what Sofie mentions is really interesting. So we were in talks with AB InBev on our app, and they wanted to use our app not to create new beers, but to detect faults. So they would be obliging their employees, and they have quite a lot of employees worldwide, to install the app on their mobile. They go to a bar, they taste the leffe, they describe what they taste, and systematically they will gather all this data, and they will detect faults in their distribution channels, or for instance that some of the distributors are keeping their beer too hot or in the sun or something, which is very bad for beer. And they could detect faults in their logistics, for instance, which was a business model we even didn't think about. So I think there's still quite a lot of business models in this where I mean, leave it up to maybe you guys to think what can we do with this data, which is still unexplored. I do agree as well. We could not make this beer without a top brewer. Mm-hmm. So it inspired him. He said, "Well, this is interesting. I've never thought about this." But at the end, we needed his craftsmanship to bring this to a product. Data is not doing this. So
yes, Eugenio on the ethical side.
Well, my ethical side. It's good. The consumer should enjoy, but now you want him to work a little bit also to give you some some information, some data, to work on. And okay, that's fair enough. Let's keep it within the limit of learned understanding of what beer and beer drinking really is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any more questions from your point of view as a DPO or anything else about data? Now might be the moment, or otherwise we might have a beer.
No.
Yes.
Oh.
No.
You take this one.
Yes, this one is working. So, first of all, I want to thank the panel for this interesting discussion. The aim of the evening was to have a discussion on data and beer, and I think that is what we got here. Thank you, Sofie, for being here. It was very nice to hear how to taste beers, and I learned a lot of it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jan. You have different kind of perspectives that you gave us from the beer app to the Viva beer. Thank you very much. Eugenio, for you, thank you very much for being here, from coming over from Italy as the land of wine. You didn't get a glass of Viva beer, and you told me that you learned to drink beer here in Belgium. You worked here, so I have some beer left for you. We'll take that.
Rome do as Romans do, and
and then of course, Tim, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure for working with you, for preparing this session and doing the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.